Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new Warframe guide. And this is very likely going to be one of the more complicated guides we've covered, as we're going to be looking at focus, that really weird thing that you get access to once you complete the second dream. But what is focus to start with? Focus is, as mentioned, what you get access to once you access the second dream and have completed it. Focus introduces the 5 main focus schools, which are Naramon, Dorai, Zemerik, Vazarin, and Unaru. Bit weirdly named, I know, but they are the schools that you'll be dealing with, each of which will generate different buffs, traits, and talents. In short, the focus tree, if you really want to make it into a layman's terms, is essentially a talent tree that has 5 different areas you can focus on to give you different talents and to specialize in different things. In this video, we are going to be covering the methods of earning focus and a little bit about what focus is, for the sake of an introductory video for new players. However, as a disclaimer, there is a lot that goes into focus, and this guide isn't to explain every minute detail. Instead, it's more so to help you get a basic understanding as to who, how, and what focus is, and how to make use of it to benefit your gameplay. So right off the bat, what is focus? In short, focus is a form of secondary XP you earn during your time playing the game. Now, you can't earn this right off the bat. First of all, you'll need to equip a focus lens. Depending on which focus lens you equip will depend on which focus school you earn focus for. Also, having an affinity booster affects the focus income, so use them if you got them. So let's say, for example, you equip a Vazarin lens to your weapon. Any kills made with that weapon will take the XP or affinity of that kill and convert it to focus XP. There's a calculation as to the distribution of focus earned, but that goes into a whole lot of different kind of video that would probably be for a more in-depth analysis as to how you farm focus and all that, but we'll leave that for another video down the line. However, I will also leave a handy link below with a further explanation as to what it is, should you wish to know more. Keep in mind, there are 3 types of lens. You have the normal, and greater, and also the Eidolon lens. You earn focus for all 3 of them, but the bigger the lens, the greater the XP and focus you'll earn. Regular lenses can be obtained from bounties on Fortuna and Cetus, and the greater lenses are blueprints obtained from the marketplace, which you need the smaller lenses in order to craft. Then the Eidolon lenses come from tier 5 bounties and are tailored to a focus school you choose and give even more focus towards the focus school you tailor towards. The calculation of the XP, as mentioned before, will be linked in the description below. There is a certain calculation as to how much they earn you by percentage, but that again will explode your brain if we go into every finite detail, and that's the last thing I want to do with a beginner's guide. So with that being said, before we go too much deeper into this guide, there's a couple things to be said that I find personally like to take advantage of farming focus. These little tidbits that you should probably take into mind when you first equip a lens. A. Make sure the lens is on a weapon or a frame that's good at dealing lots of damage. There is absolutely no point on putting it on something like a Loki, because, well, they're just not going to kill anything, and then you don't earn focus for stuff you don't kill. So the more quickly and efficiently you kill, the more focus you earn. B. Grab the yellow orbs as often as you can. These will greatly increase your focus income. They also spawn quicker the more you kill. Otherwise, they tend to have a 2 to 3 minute spawn timer. These little yellow orbs are basically things that will appear in your mission so long as you have a focus lens equipped, and your HUD will come up with a little glowy yellow object, a little yellow indicator, when they appear on your map. And we'll explain a little bit more about these in a little bit. Now, let's have a little look at some methods of earning focus. I'm going to give you an example of a couple of ways that you can earn a good amount of focus. As a little disclaimer, we won't go into the finite of each method, as we would be here again for an eternity explaining each one of them. The first method we're going to look at is sleep/stealth farming. Now, this can be done in a multitude of ways. Ideally, you're going to want to choose a high-level extermination. Ideally, Adaro on Sedna is very good for this, as it has no scanners or anything that can detect you, and you can go through using your stealth and sleep whilst remaining undetected. The idea of this method is that you're going to be putting enemies to sleep or executing them while stealth, so you build a stealth modifier. The stealth modifier will build 100% with each stealth kill you obtain, up to a maximum of 500%. This thusly increases the amount of focus you gain by that percentage. So the plan is here, you kill enough to get the yellow orb to spawn, which then gives you 8 times the amount of focus. You then get the stealth modifier, giving you 500% bonus on top of that, and as you pick up the orb, you're then going to have 45 seconds to kill as much as possible, which will in turn earn you an absolute crud ton of focus. This method is a little bit inconsistent and requires a bit of practice to get good at. However, I have a guide using Equinox for this, and it is still a very fun method of earning focus, and there are most certainly other ways of doing so. The second method of earning a mother crudding load of affinity, we don't swear here chat, Christian channel after all, is the Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. Elite Sanctuary Onslaught fundamentally just gives a mother trucking load of focus because of the type of mission it is. Loads of enemies, loads of high level enemies, and you get a lot of focus orbs to use to generate as much focus as possible. Not to mention completing each wave also then gives you some bonus focus as well. Going in here with a frame such as Sarin, such as Ember, any frame that will kill loads of enemies really quickly will earn you lots and lots of focus. So this is a method that doesn't really require much practice, but it just gives a good amount of focus with little input. So use this if you're feeling simple or you just maybe want something a bit calmer to work around. The other method we're going to be looking at is Eidolon Shards. Eidolon Shards are obtained by killing Eidolons. Scary, I know. Like, how would you make that connection? Eidolon Shards, depending on the type of Eidolon Shard you get, will earn you focus. This focus also exceeds your daily focus cap, which by the way is a thing, so if you earn too much focus from the normal method, you can hand in Eidolon Shards to your operator or from your focus tree to earn you focus that exceeds your daily focus cap. Which is good, because that means you don't have to worry so much about running out of room. And then there's the tried and trusted old school method of AoE farming. This is best done on maps like Hydron or Helene, which are super duper small with a large amount of enemy spawns. You'll want to go in there with 3 other players just to make sure you get the maximum amount of enemies spawning, and this in turn will allow you to use a frame like Banshee, like Ember, like Sarin, any frame that can again kill many enemies in a very short period of time with a lot of damage. You will then pick up the orb as you would have done in most other situations, and you'll use that as a farming method to farm the other loving crud out of these Grineer soldiers. Bearing in mind, Grineer do give generally the most amount of focus, just statistically, so you can do this on other maps. It's just maps like Helene and Hydron will generally work the best for you here. So in short, there are lots of ways to earn focus. In fact, almost everything you do earns you focus. Whether it be killing an enemy or completing a mission, just make sure you're earning for the focus tree that you want to start unlocking and make as much use of those orbs as possible. The simplicity of this comes down to you. There's no point trying to overcomplicate it, so go with it as much as you so choose. And now we're actually going to get in and look at the focus tree itself. So, right off the bat, you have your 5 focus trees, or schools in this case. After first unlocking it, you'll have your first chosen focus tree unlocked, which could be any of the 5. For me, I would have gone with Zemerik, but it's whichever you so choose. In order to unlock additional trees, you will need to spend 50,000 focus, and then that tree will become unlocked, and you can start spending points in it, assuming you've earned points for that tree in the first place. Whichever tree you have active is the tree you will get the benefits from. So right now, Zemerik is my main, and therefore I get the benefits from it. If I go to Vazarin and make primary, now I have the benefits from the Vazarin tree. I told you these names are hard to say. So as our Lord and Saviour PewDiePie would say, let's just jump right into this, shall we? There's a couple things that you need to keep an eye on with your focus tree. The first thing is, you see that little bar that says pool? The one with the focus tree name above it? At the top of your bar? Well, that's kind of like your capacity. Activating talents spends this capacity, and if you disable an ability, like so, then you will earn those points back into that capacity. It's kind of like having an amount of money that you can spend on something, and once it's spent, you can technically refund it, but it's down to personal preference. And this is kind of a bit obvious, really, but you get the idea. As you spend points, you then unlock those talents. If you don't want to have them active, you disable them, you get those points back. Now, the actual capacity itself is increased by using focus you've earned for that tree, and the actual amount of pool you have is global across all 5 of your pools. However, the amount of points you have is only relevant for that tree. So for example, if I disable these, I still have 18 out of 169. However, if I then jump to one of my other trees, you'll see that because I haven't spent quite as many points, I have 34 instead of 169. So the actual max capacity you have is global, whereas the points you have available are not. This honestly looks more complicated than it is, trust me. Once you get over the UI, this all sort of just falls into place and makes much more sense. So with each focus tree, you have 3 types of talents to unlock. Initially, you have your active talents, which are represented by the circular ones. Active talents are abilities that provide improvements or alterations in regards to utility and the operator's void powers, and are denoted by having a circular icon as mentioned. Passive talents are abilities that provide passive enhancements to a Warframe and or operator's stats, and are denoted by a hexagonal hexagonal icon. Waybound talents are abilities that passively enhance the operator's base combat stats. Unlike all other talents, these can be unbound from the focus school they are part of, therefore showing up as additional unlocked talent in any selected school. To activate the unbound nodes, their usual capacity is still required, however. So imagine this to be talents that go across all the trees that give you benefits all the time. These are sort of things that will be things like Inner Gaze, Rejuvenating Tides, Enduring Tides, things that generally improve general statistics. In order to make them a waybound passive that goes across all focus schools, however, it does take a large commitment. For example, the Void Flow here, in order for me to completely unlock this to max level, I would need 1 million focus and a Brilliant Eidolon Shard. So you will need to keep an eye on these, as they are going to be very helpful for you to maximizing your focus school. A cool little tidbit is this little calculation here, which I'll have a diagram of on screen. The total required focus for all waypoints is 40,562,470. The total required capacity to have any given focus school active at any given time at max is 177. The total required focus for capacity to get it to that point is 12,098,349, and the total required focus to completely unlock your entire focus tree is 52,660,819. And if you want to know how long that'll take you in days, if you maxed out your capacity every single day, it will take you a minimum of 192 days to completely unlock your focus tree. That is a little bit daunting, but bear in mind this is something you generally chip away as you generally play the game. And the graph will sort of give you a more visualized representation of how this works, but as you can see, it's a big investment, but the more you invest, the more you get out. And finally, the focus trees themselves. Something to realize about these trees is that you should definitely experiment as much as possible with different builds and what each node does, as they can greatly affect your playstyle depending on what you want to achieve. Also to note, you can only go sequentially to unlock later nodes in your tree. For example, if I wanted Void Singularity, I couldn't get there unless I've unlocked Void Static. So seeing as we're on this already, we're going to start with Zemerik. This is one that often led to be one of the newer player-friendly focus schools, as it has a lot of simplicity with energy regeneration, energy efficiency, so this is generally my suggestion to newer players for the sake of getting into learning the focus tree. The first node you get is super duper awesome, and definitely a benefit for new players that want some more efficiency out of their energy orbs. This allows you to have energy over time for each energy orb you pick up, making life much easier and less likely to worry about running out of energy mid-fight. Energy Pulse should be something you always try to keep advantage of when you're running Zemerik. One of the best nodes to get in here right off the bat once you first start unlocking your nodes in the focus tree is Energizing Dash followed by Lightning Dash. This is an awesome talent that allows you to generate a ring around yourself after a Void Dash, which will regenerate energy over time while you stand in it, as well as for your team. You can even expand that with some damage by adding Lightning Dash, which adds additional lightning damage after each Void Dash. If I say dash one more time with this, I'm gonna too many dashes. Either way, Energizing Dash, Lightning Dash, really good in combination together, regenerates energy for your team, and also gives you some damage as well after each Void Dash. The rest of this focus tree focuses on benefiting energy to your operator and your frame while adding some utility with things like Temporal Blast, for example, which slows down enemies, And then there's also Voltaic Blast, which creates a surge of electricity, zapping enemies within 10 meters for 200% damage. This is, I mean, a lot of these are very self-explanatory, so you can sort of get in, see what they do, and see which one you like the most. And you'll see a bit of a trend with this across all of the focus trees in the regard that it kind of tests, you kind of get what you get on the tin, really. And the last recommendation from this one is the passive Waybound, which is Void Flow. You definitely want to unlock this as soon as possible, as having that extra energy for your operator is going to be super useful in terms of actually consistently jumping around, dealing damage, and making use of excess energy. Although you, again, will need that Brilliant Eidolon Shard and that 1 million focus, so you may just level it up a little bit initially, and then unlock it once you've unlocked a bit more of the focus tree itself. Now we're going over to Dorai. This focus tree is great for Eidolons as it gives a big benefit to damage and the types of damage you deal specifically with your operator, and with some tie over to your frame too. In the Dorai tree, the first thing you want to get right off the bat is Void Strike. This is an amazing ability that will generate a very useful buff for you whilst you're crouched in operator mode. The longer you're crouched in operator mode, the bigger this buff becomes, and it is a multiplicative buff, which gives you a multiplier that stacks exponentially. This is something that will be used immensely well with slower firing amps, as it will only use up these stacks once per shot. So if you use a much quicker firing amp, those charges you gain are used up much quicker. So use this for the slower firing amps, the ones that fire the big chunky single shots, and you'll see much more of a benefit. On top of that, you also have Inner Gaze and Eternal Gaze up the top here. These are exceptionally useful. These passives that are extremely useful will benefit you across the board, as they are the Waybound passives that will tailor across the across your passive element to your other focus trees. Inner Gaze increases your energy by 40% at max rank, and Eternal Gaze increases your energy regeneration for all amps and void beams. So making use of this along with Void Strike will be very useful for Eidolons, as well as just general use of your operator. I personally love using Blazing Dash in combination with Meteoric Dash. It's a lovely little bit of utility that adds a bit of fire behind you as you use your Void Dash. So you can sort of get an idea. This is all about focusing on your operator, dealing more damage with your operator, getting a bit more utility out of certain abilities you have with your operator, such as Rising Blast, Blazing Dash, Meteoric Dash, all adding to the already existing damage you deal. Moving on to the Naramon tree now. This tree is all about melee and helps your Warframe considerably. Your first node you're looking at is Affinity Spike. This is also exceptionally useful for farming additional focus and using the stealth modifier farming method mentioned earlier. You'll be able to farm a huge amount of focus using this talent, and it's something that you'll just naturally have active with this tree active. In short, this gives you 45% bonus affinity from your melee attacks. I also personally recommend going to get Power Spike as quick as possible. This is a melee combo counter benefactor, which will allow you your combo meter to decrease a lot slower. This in turn will allow you to be a lot more playful with your melee weapons, and is super helpful with the slower type of weapons that may not be able to hit things as quickly as possible, to maybe then allow your melee combo meter to fall off quicker. So use this in conjunction with very melee friendly builds, and definitely get it as quick as possible. There's also some crowd control, there's also some disorientations, there's a lot of very useful abilities towards your melee combat here, with things like Disorientating Blast, which will disorientate enemies. You've got Disarming Blast, which even disarms the enemy as well. So if you fancy sticking to this and going really hard into it, definitely getting these early will benefit your operator usage as well. This focus tree definitely takes a little bit of practice of getting used to, as there's a lot of practical applications within most of these abilities that will require you to at least use them once or twice, maybe even go to the simulacrum and give them a bit of a test around first. But definitely a focus school that I would recommend should you be very melee heavy. The Unaru tree is pretty straightforward. However, we're going to go into a little bit of detail because this is one that a lot of people use, but the simplicity is very useful as well. This focus tree is there to benefit your operator primarily in defensive capabilities, and also has one of the most useful buffs in the entirety of the focus school for your operator. Unaru Wisp, this lovely little ability over here. Unaru Wisp generates a 100% buff to the person who picks up the wisp you generate. The way this wisp is generated is by void blasting an enemy, and then it will generate a tiny, incy-wincy little wisp, which you really have to keep your eyes open for. And you can then pick it up, or your allies can pick it up, and that gives them a massive buff for 12 seconds. This can also be stacked with things like the Dorai tree to give you an even bigger benefit as well. So it's definitely something you want to try and get right off the bat, especially if you're planning on doing Eidolons. The second you're done with Unaru Wisp, I highly advise going towards Basilisk Scale and Basilisk Gaze, as these will work tremendously well if you're focusing on the Unaru tree, seeing as you're going to be using your operator a lot with this tree. Having Basilisk Scale for that additional armor, and then Basilisk Gaze to increase the radius of your Void Blast, thus making it easier for you to generate an Unaru Wisp, is going to help you a lot in the long run. Moving towards Sundering Dash and Crippling Dash afterwards will then help you with that as well, as you're going to get a bit of crowd control, as also a bit of support for your team in reducing the enemy's damage, as well as also the armor they have. And the final tree is the Vazarin tree. This tree focuses a lot on team assistance and a sort of support healer role for your operator, if you will. In short, this is probably the least used tree, but for the sake of usefulness, you definitely want Rejuvenating Tides right off the bat. This is a passive that will increase your operator's health regeneration by 4 seconds, allowing you to regenerate your health faster and keep you alive longer. Everything else in this tree serves to buff, regenerate health, give shields to your team, or act as utility. Give this tree a look if you want to be more of a support role. I personally really recommend going for Mending Soul, as that it gives you instant revives right off the bat, and that is really, really lovely, especially if you're in slightly higher level missions and you don't want your allies to be on their ass quite as long as they would be normally. Then you got towards Protective Dash and Sonic Dash. The Protective Dash, allies hit by Void Dash are granted immunity from damage for 5 seconds, and healed 60% over 5 seconds. You're healing your allies as an operator. That is immensely useful. Definitely get as much of this tree unlocked as quickly as possible to help you. Also, if you've never noticed this, it kind of looks like a man that's fallen over. You kind of got the legs, the head, the arms. He's like, oh no, I've fallen over and I can't get up. Anyway, this tree is very useful and quite fun to play with just for the sake of being a healer. And that is it for the focus guide. There's a lot more we could have gone into here, but without making this video more than an hour long, this will cover most of the elements you'll need to know to moderately understand the focus tree. So, hopefully this video has been helpful. If it has been, do make sure you leave a like, maybe share it to your friends, and possibly even throw down a subscribe down there. I'll leave a link to my Twitter and my Twitch down below, as I love getting you guys involved with these. Using the help of our lovely friends here, we recorded this on Twitch with the help of the community. You can help these videos be produced and help get your own perspective and your own opinion put into these videos to help shape how they end up being. So maybe we'll see you there sometime. In fact, I highly recommend it. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see all of you top hatters in the next video. Hold on, where's my webcam? Where's my webcam? Ta-ra.